Hello, Jeremy Gulban. Welcome to Compass, and thanks so much for taking the time. Can you please start by explaining what CherryRoad Media is and how it fits into the larger CherryRoad Technologies?
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for having me on and taking an interest in what we're trying to do here. So, this kind of all began back in the summer of 2020 or spring, summer 2020 during the pandemic. And as a technology company, we really wanted to do something to help. And so, we looked at solutions around digital solutions for schools as children were learning at home and cities as public meetings were trying to be online. And we found that there was just no interest because everyone's default was to go to Google or Facebook or one of the big tech solutions to try to do it. And we just felt a little bit of helplessness with that. And as we started looking around, became concerned with the scale and the brand awareness that these big tech companies had, and felt like it was really kind of a threat to small business in America. And so we looked at ways we could help, and local newspapers came to mind. 2020 was a really tough year for local newspapers. A lot closed down throughout the pandemic. And so, one night I went out on a website and looked for newspapers that were for sale and found a great little newspaper up in Grand Marais, Minnesota, and placed a call to the broker. And, things kind of went from there, and we purchased it. And things went so well, we decided to look at other areas and other opportunities. And what we're really trying to do here is bring technology into small town America, into small town newspapers in America, and use it as a force for good rather than a force of competition, which has really been previously happening.
Mm. So, what does that look like to bring technology into small town newspapers?
Well, if you go to a newspaper like the Star Tribune or one of the major newspaper websites, you'll see all sorts of digital solutions that they have. Streaming opportunities, online marketplaces, just anything you can think of, and it's constantly changing. Right, technology is moving so fast right now, but a small newspaper really doesn't have the resources to be able to do anything like that. So what we want to do is we want to bring all of those types of technologies, even just upgrading websites or linking the small businesses in the community to the newspaper website so that people can click right through, place orders for products, understand what inventory they have. So kind of an online marketplace, but then also bring in more streaming type of opportunities, such as this, these types of solutions where we can keep people informed more than just a print product, which is not to say that we don't want to continue to print the newspaper, because we do, because I think that's what really gives the newspaper its sense of realness in the community.
I'm wondering, have you faced any kind of resistance maybe at this idea right away of someone from East Coast coming to small town Grand Marais with these ideas, or has it been largely an excited response about what might happen with newspapers?
I would say it was met with a healthy dose of skepticism. And there was a lot of drama in the first few weeks. The local public radio station did a number of stories about, what's going on here. And finally, we connected on an interview, which I thought went really well. And I think that, I explained what the vision was, and I think that helped to start to turn the tide. And then our actions really spoke louder than our words. As we invested in the newspaper up there, we gave some raises to the staff. We purchased new equipment. We fixed up the office so that it was much more, approachable to the community. And, over time, people started to accept that this was a good thing. And I'm just struck by, I had a conversation with one gentleman up there over the summer when I, finally made a trip out there. And he said, I was probably your biggest critic, and I'm really supportive and really happy with what you guys are doing here. So I think that was really great to hear.
Can you talk more about this? So, can you talk about how many newspapers Cherry Road Media now owns, and then specifically about these new acquisitions in Minnesota?
Yeah, sure. So we went from one in November of 2020 to, I think we have about 46 today. And in a number of states, from Minnesota really all the way down to Texas now, across the center of the country there. And we purchased 7 newspapers from Gannett back at the first of the year, which are in Crookston, Montevideo, Sleepy Eye, Granite Falls, Cottonwood, Redwood Falls, and St. James. And we also have two, in addition to Grand Marais, we have 2 other newspapers that we started from scratch when the local newspapers had closed. One in International Falls over the summer, and 2 weeks ago in Two Harbors in Lake County. So that's kind of our scope of what we have today in Minnesota. And other than Crookston, they're all weeklies. Crookston is 2 times a week.
Oh, okay. So I'm curious just to hear you talk about some of these new ideas that you have, especially this idea of streaming. It seems like when some of these smaller newspapers were maybe acquired by larger parent organizations, there was this stripping down of resources. And I'm wondering how you plan to build that back up so that people that work at community newspapers seem to be spread so thin. I'm wondering what your plan is to help rebuild this up so they can do maybe some of these more digital friendly things.
Well, we're taking baby steps on that, and strip thin is a great way to describe it. In a lot of places, there's one reporter slash editor and maybe one person, an office staff. In Granite Falls, there's currently no reporters, and in Redwood Falls, up until last week, there were no reporters for the prior about year and a half. So we're looking to fill those spots. It's the first thing we need to do. Get some people in locally to be able to do the very basics. And then the good thing about our company is we have about 500 employees overall. So we have a lot of resources on the technology side of the business to be able to help do some of these new ideas that we're pursuing here. But ultimately, we need more staff locally, and that's what we need to get to. However, the revenue levels, it's a vicious cycle. The newspaper cut staff, the revenues dropped during the pandemic, that they cut staff, the quality suffers, more people cancel subscriptions, more advertisers stop advertising. So we have to reverse that trend. And the first step to doing that is to get more local staff in there to show it's a new day. We're going to improve the newspaper and bring subscribers and advertisers back.
You've kind of alluded to this earlier when you talked about how your actions were speaking louder than words when you were first acquiring the Grand Marais paper, but why should people trust you?
It's a great question. And I think, in America 2022, there should always be a lot of skepticism of what big companies are saying. And I could understand why everybody would ask, why is this tech guy from New Jersey buying our newspapers? It seemed totally logical to me. I guess I'll just say, we're investing in the community. If we weren't looking to if we weren't looking to be here for the long term, we wouldn't have started 2 newspapers that had already closed, right? So we're showing that this means a lot to us, that we're committed to this. As I mentioned in Redwood Falls, after a year and a half of there being no one there, we've added a new reporter. So it's not like we're cutting costs, trying to suck profits out of the newspapers. We're actually doing the opposite. We're investing money into them. And, I think people will see changes coming that I hope they'll embrace and, continue to support the newspapers.
How will you measure success? It sounds like more local investment with getting more reporters in these papers, but what other measures are you looking for?
I think the biggest measure is subscribers, whether print or digital. And a lot of talk goes into the advertising side of the newspaper business, which is important. But I think the subscribers are the better metric. And if you looked at any of those newspapers that we purchased from Gannett, you would see a very big downward trend over the last several years of subscribers canceling. And when we can turn that around and start increasing that, week over week, month over month, that's where I think we'll start to see that we're making progress.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as the future of small town community newspapers?
I think the future is really the center of the community in terms of working with business and working with the local economic development agencies and working with the local people. So I spent the weekend this past Saturday night in Sleepy Eye, and I went to a dinner at the Chamber of Commerce annual awards banquet. And I was very surprised with how many young people there were, both at the chamber dinner and at the local coffee shop and brewery that opened a couple years ago. And actually, the owners of that business were the business of the year. And they're 2 doctors, one of whom grew up there and came back after being away. And they invested in taking the old movie theater that was crumbling and completely renovated it into this beautiful coffee shop and brewery. And my wife and I sat there Sunday morning having a cup of coffee. And every time the door opened, a young family would come in and get some coffee and go. And, I had this vision. And I think a lot of people have this vision that small town America is kind of withering away. But I don't think that that's the case. And so a good, strong community, a good, strong economic development approach is critical to bringing younger people back into the community or bringing new younger people into the community. And I think the newspaper really is a key component of that. And one of the things we heard in International Falls when the newspaper closed was that they felt like they were less of a community if they didn't have a newspaper. And they really embraced us coming in, trying to reopen the paper. And that's what really struck me, that the newspaper is an important institution in a community, especially if the community is trying to rebuild and grow. So I think we can help do part of that. And I think our knowledge of technology and our ability to bring technology to the table can help with that, because younger people want to get their news digitally. That's just a fact of life at this point. And if newspapers can't do that, then they're not going to survive. So I think we can really bring those skills and help to make the newspaper stronger as a pillar in the community.
Is your ultimate plan long-term ownership, or are you working in ways to get ownership back into local people, or have you not gotten that far?
Probably haven't gotten that far, but I think there could be all sorts of options around that. I mean, there are thousands of newspapers around the country that are owned by people who are in their 60s or 70s today and are ready to retire. And we can't buy them all, and we shouldn't buy them all, because that's not a good thing either. So the whole entire industry needs to find a way to get younger people to want to own newspapers. And whether that's, us selling some of them to them, or using our skills and technologies to help, new owners come in. We've been very clear that if we build something, we're going to want to figure out how to make it available either free or at a low cost to other newspapers to share whatever we're doing here. So I think that's really the key, is to get more people to want to own a newspaper.
Great. Well, it's been great to chat with you. I appreciate you taking the time, and I have enjoyed hearing about all your ideas.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me and for making your viewers aware of what we're doing.